The voice cut through the walls like a knife. "Eat it now, you disgusting child! I don't care if it's spoiled!" The plate crashed against the marble floor. Fragments of white ceramic scattered like frozen tears, spreading across the silent dining room. In the center, a 6-year-old girl trembled before the remains of food. Her brown eyes, enormous with terror, didn't dare look up. Elizabeth Roberts leaned over her, her expensive perfume mixing with the sour smell of the food. What Elizabeth didn't know was that someone else was already listening. "Pick it up with your hands, all of it, and eat it." From the doorway, motionless like a statue of salt, Alan Marshall watches the scene that shatters his world to pieces. His daughter, his little Sophie, is on her knees. If this story has already touched your heart in this first minute, subscribe to the channel. Here you'll find stories that heal, inspire, and make you believe in human goodness again. But to understand how we reach this moment that will change everything forever, we must go back 3 months earlier, when a child's silence began to scream louder than words. Charleston awakens under a gray March sky. In the elegant brick colonial house on Meeting Street, breakfast is served on porcelain china that reflects distorted faces. Sophie Marshall is 6 years old and carries the weight of the world on her small shoulders. She sits in the corner of the dining room table, as far as possible from Elizabeth, slowly chewing a piece of toast that tastes like cardboard in her mouth. Her father, Alan, reviews documents while drinking coffee. 42 years old, dark hair with some premature gray, eyes that once shone but now seem lost in numbers and responsibilities. His construction company consumes his hours, his days, his life. "Daddy," whispers Sophie, her voice barely a thread. "Alan, honey, don't bother your father while he's having breakfast," interrupts Elizabeth with a smile that doesn't reach her green eyes. 40 years old, perfectly blonde, impeccable manicure. Everything about her screams calculated elegance. Sophie closes her mouth as if she had received an invisible slap. Alan looks up for a second, sees his daughter in silence, and something stirs uncomfortably in his chest. But the phone rings. Work. Always work. "I have to go," he says, kissing Elizabeth's forehead and barely touching Sophie's brown hair. "Take good care of my princess." "Of course, honey. I always do." The door closes. The sound resonates like a sentence. Elizabeth waits exactly 30 seconds. She counts Alan's footsteps moving away. Then her face changes. The mask falls. "Get up, take your plate to the kitchen, and don't leave a single crumb on the table." Sophie obeys with robotic movements. Her bare feet barely make noise against the cold floor. In the kitchen, Carol Thompson cleans the last breakfast dishes. 60 years old, gray hair pulled back in a bun, hands weathered by 20 years of service in that house. She knew Sophie's mother. She watched how that bright child gradually dimmed like a candle in a storm. "Good morning, little one," whispers Carol, stroking Sophie's head. Elizabeth appears in the doorway like an elegant shadow. "Carol, the child can have breakfast alone. She doesn't need you to spoil her." "Of course, ma'am." But in Carol's eyes, there's something Elizabeth can't control. The truth. Sophie finishes her breakfast and goes up to her room. The walls are covered with drawings that are no longer colorful like before. Now she only uses gray and black pencils, faceless figures, houses without doors, birds with broken wings. From the window, she sees the neighborhood children playing in the square. Their laughter reaches her like echoes from a world she no longer belongs to. She sits on her bed and hugs a worn, stuffed animal, a brown rabbit that was her mother's last gift. "Mommy," she whispers into the void, "why did you leave me with her?" The rabbit doesn't answer. It never does. Downstairs, Elizabeth checks her phone, plans her day, hair salon, lunch with friends, shopping. Her perfect life, built on the silence of a broken child. Carol watches from the stairs. In her wrinkled hands, a damp cloth she squeezes forcefully. 20 years cleaning this house, but she had never seen so much invisible dirt. The afternoon falls over Charleston like a heavy blanket. Alan returns at 8, tired, with red eyes from reading so many contracts. "How was your day, princess?" Sophie looks at him from the sofa where she's doing homework. For a second, her lips open. But Elizabeth's gaze, from the other end of the room, freezes her. "Good, Daddy." "Just good? Tell me something more." Silence. Sophie looks at her small hands. Elizabeth approaches, puts a hand on Alan's shoulder. "She's been very quiet today. I think she misses her mother. It's normal, isn't it, honey?" Alan nods. He doesn't see Elizabeth's satisfied smile. He doesn't see how Sophie shrinks a little more. Dinner passes in silence. 3 people sharing a table, but each on their own island of loneliness. When Sophie goes to sleep, Alan goes up to tuck her in. He sits on the edge of the bed, observes the drawings stuck on the wall. "Why don't you draw flowers anymore, princess?" "I don't know, Daddy." "Your mommy drew the most beautiful flowers in the world." For the first time in weeks, Sophie smiles, barely, like a ray of sunshine between black clouds. "Will you teach me tomorrow?" "Of course, my love. Tomorrow." But tomorrow is a promise that breaks before dawn. The phone rings at 6 in the morning. Emergency at the construction site. Alan dresses hurriedly, kisses sleeping Sophie's forehead, and leaves, promising to return early. Elizabeth smiles from her bedroom door. Everything goes according to her plan. What secrets does a woman hide who smiles when a father walks away from his daughter? The answer will freeze your blood. The April sun enters through the windows like an interrogation. Sophie is sitting in the kitchen, facing a bowl of cold oatmeal that looks like gray cement. "Eat it all," orders Elizabeth, standing by the window looking toward the street. "I'm not going to waste food because of you." "It's very cold." Sophie's voice is so low it can barely be heard. Elizabeth turns slowly, like a predator that has detected movement. "Excuse me? Are you talking back to me?" "No, I just nothing. Eat." Elizabeth approaches. Her heels click against the floor like hammer blows. She leans over Sophie until her minty breath touches the girl's ear. "Your father isn't here to protect you, you know? Here it's just you and me. And I'm in charge." Sophie swallows the cold oatmeal. Each spoonful hurts her throat, but she doesn't dare cough. "When your father asks what you had for breakfast, what are you going to tell him?" That it was very good." "Exactly. Because if you say anything else—" Elizabeth smiles, but it's the smile of a knife. "Well, nobody's going to believe you. I'm his wife. You're just a child." Carol enters the kitchen and sees the scene. Sophie with tears in her eyes, Elizabeth walking away as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, ma'am. Do you need anything?" "Yes, Carol. The child has finished breakfast. Make sure she dresses properly for school." When Elizabeth leaves, Carol sits next to Sophie. She doesn't say anything. She just gently wipes away her tears. "Does your tummy hurt, little one?" Sophie nods. Everything hurts. Her stomach, her heart, her soul. "Eat this." Carol gives her a small piece of bread with honey. "Our secret, okay?" At school, Miss Elena notices that Sophie is quieter than usual. During recess, she stays sitting in a corner while the other children play. "Sophie, do you want to play with Maria and Sarah?" "No, thank you." "Is everything okay at home?" The question hangs in the air. Sophie looks down at the ground. In her mind, she hears Elizabeth's voice. "Nobody's going to believe you." "Yes, miss." At 6 in the afternoon, Alan returns exhausted. Elizabeth receives him with a perfect kiss and a radiant smile. "How's my princess?" "Very well, honey. She ate all her breakfast. She's an exemplary child." Sophie appears on the stairs. Her face is pale, but she forces a smile. "Hi, Daddy. Come here, give Daddy a hug." While Alan hugs his daughter, Elizabeth watches them. Her eyes shine with cold satisfaction. Everything under control. During dinner, Elizabeth tells funny anecdotes about her day. Alan laughs, relaxed. Sophie eats in silence, moving food around her plate more than chewing it. Aren't you hungry, princess? Before Sophie can answer, Elizabeth intervenes. She ate a lot at snack time, didn't you, Sophie? Sophie nods. The lie tastes bitter in her mouth. Okay, but tomorrow no snacks before dinner, says Alan, ruffling his daughter's hair. That night, when everyone sleeps, Sophie sneaks down to the kitchen. She's hungry, a hunger that hurts. She opens the refrigerator slowly, trying not to make noise. She finds a yogurt and opens it carefully. What are you doing? Elizabeth's voice freezes her. She turns and finds her in the doorway in her nightgown, with arms crossed. I was hungry. Hungry? Didn't you have enough dinner? Yes, but... No buts. Go to your room. Now. Please, just a little. Elizabeth approaches, takes the yogurt from Sophie's trembling hands and throws it in the trash. Children who steal food don't deserve to eat. Go to your room and think about what you did. Sophie climbs the stairs with trembling legs. From the hallway, she hears Elizabeth talking on the phone with a sweet and melodious voice, probably with a friend, laughing about something funny. She gets into bed and hugs her stuffed rabbit. Her stomach hurts from emptiness, but there's a deeper pain she can't locate, a pain that has no name but grows every day. The next morning, Alan finds Sophie having oatmeal breakfast in the kitchen. Elizabeth is perfectly dressed, smiling. Good morning, beautiful family, she says, kissing both. Good morning, honey. Everything okay last night? Perfect. Sophie slept like an angel. Alan looks at his daughter. She has dark circles. She seems thinner. Are you okay, princess? Sophie looks up. For a moment, her eyes connect with her father's. In them, there's a silent plea, a desperate supplication. But Elizabeth interposes, serving more coffee. She's perfect, aren't you, Sophie? And the child, trained in the art of forced silence, nods. Yes, Daddy, I'm fine. But she's not fine. And every day that passes, she's less fine. Carol watches from the corner of the kitchen. In her hands, a cloth she twists until her knuckles turn white. That afternoon, while cleaning Sophie's room, she finds a new drawing under the bed. It's different from the others. A small figure in the center of the page, surrounded by black shadows. And in the upper corner, written in trembling letters, Help. Carol keeps the drawing in her apron. Her heart beats so loud she fears the whole house can hear it. A child's silent scream is about to find the voice it needs. But will it be too late? May arrives with flowers in Charleston's parks, but in the Marshall house only shadows grow. Sophie is at school recess when the world becomes blurry. Her legs turn to jelly, the playground spins like a broken carousel, and she collapses on the gravel like a bird with broken wings. Sophie? Sophie, wake up! Miss Elena's voice sounds very distant. The children form a circle, their worried faces mixing like watercolors in the rain. In the school nurse's office, Sophie drinks small sips of sugar water. Her lips are pale as newspaper. When was the last time you ate something substantial, honey? Asks the nurse, taking her pulse. At breakfast. But breakfast had been only half a glass of milk and a broken cookie. Elizabeth had said that chubby girls aren't liked by anyone. The principal calls home. Elizabeth answers on the second ring with worried and perfect voice. What happened? Is my girl okay? She fainted during recess. It seems to be from low blood sugar. Has she been eating well? Of course. She eats like a horse. It must be the heat, right? Children are so sensitive. Elizabeth arrives at school in 15 minutes, with perfectly styled hair and eyes full of calculated tears. My poor baby, she says, hugging Sophie with a tenderness that only exists when there's an audience. Mommy is here. The principal observes the scene. Something doesn't fit, but she can't put her finger on what. Maybe you should take her to the pediatrician, just as a precaution. Of course, we have an appointment this afternoon. Lie. There's no appointment. There never will be. In the car, on the way home, Elizabeth drives in silence. Her knuckles are white on the steering wheel. Did you tell the principal anything? No. Anything about food? About home? No, I didn't say anything. You better not, because if you start making up stories, your father will think you're crazy, and they send crazy girls away from their daddies. Sophie shrinks in the back seat. The seatbelt is too big for her, like everything in her life. That night, Alan returns earlier than usual. Elizabeth has already told him her version of events. Sophie fainted from the heat. She's perfectly fine. The doctor said it was normal in sensitive children. How do you feel, princess? Good, Daddy. But Alan looks at her more attentively than other times. He sees the dark circles, the way her clothes fit loosely, how she avoids his gaze. Are you eating well? Elizabeth answers before Sophie. She eats like a bird. She's always been like that. Her mother was the same. The mention of his deceased wife makes Alan feel guilty for doubting. Mary had been thin, delicate. Maybe Sophie had inherited her fragile constitution. The next day, while Alan reviews documents in his office, his secretary knocks on the door. Mr. Marshall, there's something that arrived for you. It's an envelope without a return address. Inside, a children's drawing folded in 4 parts. Alan unfolds it on his desk. It's a drawing of a house, but it's not a happy house. The windows are crying eyes. The door looks like a screaming mouth, and in the center, a figure with long hair and an elegant dress points threateningly at a small figure on the ground. At the top, in trembling pencil letters, it's written, "Eat it now." Alan's heart stops for a second. He recognizes his daughter's strokes. He recognizes her way of drawing people. In the lower right corner, a tiny signature. For Daddy, from Sophie. His hands tremble as he stores the drawing in his desk drawer. His mind searches for rational explanations. Children have nightmares. Children exaggerate. Children fantasize. But deep in his heart, something is breaking. That afternoon, he arrives home more observant. During dinner, he notices how Elizabeth serves Sophie tiny portions. He notices how the child eats slowly, as if each bite hurts. He notices the way she avoids looking Elizabeth in the eyes. Sophie, do you want more chicken? No, thank you, Daddy, I'm full. But he sees her plate. She's barely touched the food. Insist a little, honey, he tells Elizabeth quietly. She's very thin. Of course, darling. Sophie, eat a little more for Daddy. Elizabeth serves another piece of chicken on Sophie's plate. Her smile is perfect, but there's something in her eyes that Alan hadn't noticed before. Something cold. That night, when Sophie is already sleeping, Alan finds Carol cleaning the kitchen. Carol, can I ask you a question? Of course, sir. How do you see Sophie? Do you notice her different lately? Carol stands still with a half-washed plate in her hands. 20 years working for this family, and she had never been at such a dangerous crossroads. Different in what sense, sir? Quieter? More, I don't know, sad. Carol looks toward the hallway, making sure Elizabeth can't hear them. Children go through stages, sir, especially after losing their mother. It's a safe diplomatic answer, but in her eyes there's something more. A silent plea, a truth she doesn't dare pronounce. Does she eat well when I'm not here? The question hangs in the air like toxic smoke. Carol grips the plate until her knuckles turn white. I just clean, sir. It's not my place to observe. But her eyes say otherwise. Her eyes scream the truth her lips cannot pronounce. Alan nods and goes to sleep, but he can't fall asleep. Sophie's drawing is burned in his mind like hot iron. At 3 in the morning, he gets up to get water. He passes by Sophie's room and hears something that freezes his blood. Contained crying, barely audible. He gently pushes the door. His daughter is awake, hugging her stuffed rabbit, with silent tears rolling down her cheeks. Princess, what's wrong? Sophie startles, quickly wiping away her tears. Nothing, Daddy. I was thirsty. Why are you crying? I'm not crying, but her red eyes betray her. Alan sits on the edge of the bed. You know you can tell me anything, right? For a moment, Sophie's face lights up with hope. Her lips open, The words are there, waiting to come out like water held behind a dam. But then she hears footsteps in the hallway. Elizabeth appears in the door, in her nightgown, with worried expression. "Everything okay?" "I heard voices." And Sophie closes like a flower that withers at the touch of ice. "She had nightmares," says Alan. "She's better now. Poor thing. Come, let me tuck her in." Elizabeth approaches, arranges the sheets with perfect gestures of a loving mother. But when Alan turns to leave, Sophie sees the look Elizabeth gives her, a silent warning, a threat wrapped in feigned tenderness. "Sweet dreams, my love," whispers Elizabeth, kissing Sophie's forehead. When they're alone, Elizabeth leans down until her lips brush the child's ear. "Very good," she whispers so low it's almost inaudible. "You're still a smart girl." And she leaves the room with a satisfied smile. Sophie stays awake until dawn, hugging her rabbit, feeling hope slip through her fingers like sand. The next day, Alan finds another drawing in his office. This time, Carol delivers it personally. "The girl asked me to give you this, sir." It's a more explicit drawing than the previous one. A large figure with blonde hair pushes a small figure against the ground. The small figure has its mouth open in a silent scream. In the corner, written in firmer letters this time, "Daddy, do you see me?" Alan folds the drawing and keeps it with the previous one. His hands tremble slightly. For the first time in months, he cancels an important meeting and decides to go home earlier. It's time to see with his own eyes what happens in his home when he's not there. There are truths that only reveal themselves in darkness. And Alan is about to turn on the most painful light of his life. Wednesday, May 15th. Alan Marshall lies for the first time in his married life. "I have a meeting in Atlanta," he tells Elizabeth while dressing in a dark suit. "I won't be back until very late." "Be careful, honey." Elizabeth kisses his cheek, her perfume wrapping the lie like a sweet shroud. But Alan doesn't go to Atlanta. He drives to his office, tells his secretary to cancel all appointments, and at 9:30 in the morning, he's back on his street, parked 3 houses down, with a perfect view of his windows. He's going to spy on his own house. The idea turns his stomach, but Sophie's drawings burn in his conscience like embers. Through the tinted windows of his car, he sees how Elizabeth accompanies Sophie to the school door. From a distance, they look like perfect mother and daughter. Elizabeth leans down to fix Sophie's uniform, gives her a kiss on the forehead, waves goodbye. The performance is impeccable. Elizabeth returns home with light steps, humming an Italian melody. Alan waits 20 more minutes and then drives to the neighbor's garage, where his friend Charles has lent him a discreet place to park. Charles is an architect, widower, and knows Alan's delicate situation without asking uncomfortable questions. "Everything okay, brother?" he asks while Alan parks. "I need to check something. I'll explain later." At 2:30 in the afternoon, Alan is hidden in his own house's study. He entered through the back door, using the key he always keeps under the geranium pot. Elizabeth is in the garden, talking on the phone with a friend, laughing about something Alan can't hear. Carol cleans the upper floor. The vacuum cleaner sounds camouflage his steps as he positions himself behind the study curtains, with direct view of the dining room. At 3:15, Sophie arrives from school. Elizabeth's transformation is instant and terrifying. As soon as the child crosses the door, her face changes as if someone had turned off a light. The smile disappears. Her eyes harden like stones. "You're late," says Elizabeth, looking at her gold watch. "The bus was delayed." "I don't care. Go change. Quickly." Sophie runs up the stairs. Alan can hear her small, hurried steps. His heart accelerates. When Sophie comes down, no longer in her school uniform, Elizabeth is waiting for her in the dining room with a plate in hand. Alan moves closer to the curtain. What he sees stops his world. On the plate, there's food he recognizes. Leftovers from last night's dinner. Cold chicken, hardened potatoes, peas that look like small green stones. Everything mixed in a gray paste that looks like dog food. "Sit down." Is this my snack? This is what you deserve. Picky children don't deserve fresh food. Sophie sits slowly, looking at the plate with evident horror. I can't. Excuse me? Elizabeth's voice drops an octave, becomes dangerous. Alan feels his blood freeze in his veins. It's very cold, and it's going to be colder if you don't eat it right now. Sophie takes the spoon with trembling hands. She brings a bite to her mouth and makes a disgusted face. The food is rancid. I don't like it. Elizabeth approaches slowly like a feline stalking its prey. Her heels sound like gunshots against the marble floor. You know what I don't like? Her voice is a poisonous whisper. Ungrateful children who don't value what they're given. Suddenly, with a quick and calculated movement, Elizabeth pushes Sophie's head toward the plate. The child startles, spilling food on the table. Look what you did! It was an accident. Nothing is an accident with you. You do everything on purpose to make me look bad. From his hiding place, Alan feels the world crumbling. His legs tremble. He wants to come out, scream, stop this nightmare. But he's paralyzed by the shock of what he's witnessing. Elizabeth raises her hand and lets it fall on Sophie's cheek with a dry sound that resonates in the dining room like thunder. The slap. Sophie brings her hand to her reddened cheek. With eyes full of tears she refuses to shed. Now pick up that food from the floor, with your hands. Please, with your hands. Sophie kneels and begins to pick up the scattered pieces of food. Her small hands tremble as she gathers cold peas and greasy pieces of chicken. Elizabeth leans over her, her voice turned into a merciless hiss. Do you know why your mother died? Because she couldn't stand the idea of raising you. She preferred to die rather than see you grow up. The dagger of those words pierces Sophie like hot iron. Her shoulders shake with a silent sob. Don't cry. Children who cry don't deserve even rotten food. I just want my daddy. Your daddy loves me. You're just a burden, a reminder of his dead first wife. If it weren't for me, he would have already sent you to an orphanage. Each word is a precise stab, designed to break the spirit of a 6-year-old girl. Now eat that food from the floor, all of it. I can't. Elizabeth grabs Sophie's hair and pulls up, forcing her to look into her eyes. What did you say? It hurts. You know what hurts more? Your father finding out how bad you are. Finding out that you steal food at night. Finding out that you disrespect me when he's not here. I don't. Yes, you do. And if you tell him anything about this, I'll tell him you're making up stories. And you know what they do with children who lie? They take them to doctors who give them medicine to forget how to lie. The terror in Sophie's eyes is absolute. Elizabeth has built a perfect prison made of fear and manipulation. Now, eat from the floor. Sophie, defeated, lowers her head toward the marble floor. Her tears fall like raindrops on the scattered food. It's at that moment when Alan can't stand it anymore. He comes out from behind the curtain like a hurricane of fury and horror. His steps resonate like thunder in the silent dining room. What the hell is happening here? Elizabeth straightens immediately, her face transforming into a mask of perfect surprise. Alan, what are you doing here? I thought you were in Atlanta. But Alan doesn't look at her. He kneels next to Sophie, who's still on the floor, trembling like a leaf in the storm. Princess? My God, Princess! He lifts her in his arms. Sophie is so thin she feels like a broken doll. Her cheek still has the red mark from the slap. Daddy, whispers Sophie. And in that word, there's all the pain in the world. Alan looks at Elizabeth. In his eyes, there's no longer love. There's something much more dangerous, controlled fury that comes from the deepest part of a betrayed father. Alan, I can explain. Explain what? How you hit my daughter? How you forced her to eat from the floor like an animal? She was being difficult. No! Alan's voice thunders through the whole house. Don't tell me how to raise my daughter. Don't tell me this is normal. Carol appears in the dining room doorway, attracted by the screaming. She sees the scene and brings her hands to her mouth. Finally, the truth has come to light. "How long?" asks Alan, his voice trembling with contained anger. "How long have you been torturing my daughter?" "It's not torture. It's discipline. It's abuse!" Elizabeth backs away, seeing how her perfectly constructed world crumbles in real time. "Sophie, honey," says Alan, stroking his daughter's hair, "how long has this been happening?" Sophie looks at him with enormous eyes, still fearful of speaking. "You can tell me the truth. Daddy is here. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Since Mommy went to heaven?" The confession falls like a bomb. 3 years. 3 years of silent abuse, daily terror, of a child being broken piece by piece. Alan closes his eyes, feeling the full weight of his failure as a father, his work, his trips, his voluntary blindness. Everything falls on him like an avalanche of guilt. "Alan, I can change." Elizabeth starts, but he cuts her off with a look that could freeze fire. "Get out of my house." "What?" "Get out of my house, now. You can't throw me out like this." "Want to bet?" Carol from the doorway applauds slowly. It's a silent applause, but full of all the justice she had been waiting for years. Elizabeth looks around, searching for an exit, a way to regain control. But there are no more masks to put on, no more performances to act. "You're going to regret this," she says, her voice turned into a hiss. "That girl is a problem. She always has been. The only problem here is you." Elizabeth goes up the stairs like a storm, packs her essential things, and leaves the house, slamming the door so hard it resonates like the end of a nightmare. Alan stays alone with Sophie in his arms, Carol by his side, and the weight of 3 years of horror that needs healing. "Forgive me, Princess," he whispers against his daughter's hair. "Forgive me for not seeing you, for not listening to you, for not protecting you. Is she not coming back?" "Never again. I promise you." And for the first time in 3 years, Sophie smiles. A small, broken smile, but real. The truth has come to light, but can a broken heart learn to heal? The most powerful moment is yet to come. 2 weeks after the discovery, the Marshall house breathes differently. The windows are open, allowing the golden May light to enter. Sophie has regained some color in her cheeks, although her smiles are still shy, like flowers that barely dare to bloom. Carol has stopped walking on tiptoes. Now she whistles while cooking and has filled the refrigerator with all of Sophie's favorite foods: strawberry yogurts, chocolate cookies, fresh fruits that shine like edible jewels. Alan has reduced his work schedule by half. Every morning he has breakfast with his daughter, takes her to school, and every afternoon helps her with homework sitting on her room floor, surrounded by colored pencils that have finally returned to drawing flowers. But tonight is special. Alan has invited his closest friends to dinner: Charles, the widowed architect, Dr. Maria Elena, Sophie's pediatrician, and the Herrera family, a couple who has known the family for years. It's not a casual dinner. It's a declaration. "Why are so many people coming, Daddy?" asks Sophie while putting on her favorite dress, sky blue with embroidered flowers, the same one her mother had bought her before dying. "Because I want them to see something very important." "What?" Alan kneels in front of her, taking her small hands in his. "I want them to see how brave my daughter is, how strong she is, how proud I am of her." Sophie smiles, but there's nervousness in her eyes. "What if they don't like me?" "Impossible. You're impossible not to love." At 8 in the evening, the guests start arriving. Charles brings flowers for Sophie, Dr. Maria Elena brings a box of chocolates, and the Herreras come with an illustrated storybook. The table is perfectly set. White tablecloth, lit candles, the good china that hadn't been used since Alan and Elizabeth's wedding. Carol has prepared Sophie's favorite menu: roasted chicken with golden potatoes, fresh salad, and for dessert, homemade chocolate cake. Everyone sits around the table. Sophie is next to her father. Carol has been invited to sit with them as the family member she always should have been. "Thank you for coming tonight," says Alan, raising his wine glass. "There's something I want to share with you." The guests exchange curious glances. Dr. Maria Elena, who had noticed the changes in Sophie during recent medical consultations, has an idea of what might come. "You all know my daughter. You've watched her grow. But there are things about the last 3 years you never knew. Things I myself didn't know until recently." Alan looks at Sophie, who is eating slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a treasure. "Sophie, do you remember what we talked about? About telling the truth?" Sophie nods, wiping her mouth with the napkin. "Do you want to tell our friends how life was before?" For a moment, Sophie looks down. The silence at the table is so dense it can be cut with a knife. Then, with a clear and firm voice that surprises everyone, Sophie begins to speak. "Elizabeth used to hit me when Daddy wasn't here. She made me eat rotten food from the floor. She told me my mommy had died because she didn't love me." The shock at the table is palpable. Dr. Maria Elena brings her hand to her chest. Charles clenches his fists. The Herreras exchange looks of horror. "I got very hungry, but I couldn't tell Daddy because Elizabeth had told me they would give me medicine to forget things." Carol, from her place at the table, discreetly wipes away a tear. "But now Daddy knows the truth, and I'm not afraid anymore." The silence that follows is deafening. Alan puts an arm around his daughter's shoulders. "I'm telling you this because I want you to know that Sophie is the bravest person I know. She survived 3 years of abuse in silence, protecting my ignorance, carrying alone a pain that no child should carry." Dr. Maria Elena speaks first, with trembling voice. "Sophie, you're extraordinary. And Alan, thank you for having the courage to tell us this." "Where is Elizabeth now?" asks Charles, with unusual hardness in his voice. "Out of our lives forever, and with a restraining order that guarantees she can never approach Sophie again." The Herreras get up to hug Sophie, who they've known since she was a baby, and never suspected the hell she was living. "Little one, if you ever need anything at all, you can call us, okay?" Sophie nods, overwhelmed by so much love after so much time in darkness. Carol serves the chocolate cake, and for the first time in years, Sophie asks for a second portion. And a third. Everyone laughs, happy to see her eat with real appetite. "You know what's the most beautiful thing about all this?" says Dr. Maria Elena, stroking Sophie's hair. "You came out of that still being a sweet and loving child. Elizabeth couldn't break your spirit. How did you do it?" asks Mrs. Herrera. Sophie thinks for a moment, chewing her cake slowly. "I thought about my mommy, and my stuffed rabbit, and I waited for Daddy to come home, even if it was very late." "You never stopped waiting," observes Charles. "No, I knew Daddy loved me. I just didn't know how to tell him." Alan feels a lump in his throat. His daughter, at 6 years old, had had more faith in him than he had had in himself. "There's something else I want you to know," says Alan, getting up from the table. "Carol, can you come here?" Carol approaches, confused. "Carol has worked in this house for 20 years. She knew my first wife, helped raise Sophie when she was a baby, and in the last 3 years was the only person who really took care of my daughter when I wasn't here." Carol blushes, uncomfortable with so much attention. "From now on, Carol isn't just our employee. She's family. Officially. Sophie now has a grandmother who loves her, and I have a mother who will help me be a better father." Applause erupts around the table. Carol cries openly, hugging Sophie as if she were her own granddaughter. "And there's one more thing," says Alan, returning to his place. "Sophie has started therapy with a wonderful child psychologist. Not because she's broken, but because warriors also need help healing their wounds." "What's a psychologist?" asks Mr. Herrera to Sophie. "She's a very nice lady who teaches me to put names to my feelings. Before everything was just sad or scared. Now I know I can be sad but also hopeful. Or scared, but also brave." The wisdom of these words coming from a 6-year-old girl leaves everyone speechless. "And what do you feel right now?" asks Dr. Maria Elena. Sophie looks around the table. She sees faces that love her, plates full of food she can eat without fear, candles that illuminate smiling faces. Happy, she says simply, and safe, and wanting more cake. All the laughter fills the dining room, chasing away the last echoes of pain that might have remained hidden in the corners. When the guests leave, close to midnight, Alan takes Sophie to bed. While tucking her in, she asks him a question that leaves him breathless. "Daddy, why did Elizabeth hate me so much?" Alan sits on the edge of the bed, searching for words a child can understand. "Sometimes, little one, there are people who have so much pain inside they don't know what to do with it. And instead of healing themselves, they hurt others. Elizabeth didn't hate you. She hated her own life. Does that excuse her? No, never. Nothing excuses hurting a child. But understanding it helps us not become like her." Sophie hugs her stuffed rabbit, thinking, "I don't want to be like her when I grow up." "You won't be, because you know what it feels like to be hurt. So you'll never want to hurt anyone else. Do you promise you'll never leave me alone with someone who will hurt me again?" "I promise you. And this time, Daddy is going to keep his promise." Sophie smiles and closes her eyes. For the first time in 3 years, she falls asleep without fear. The power of a child who never lost hope is about to change not only her life, but also that of everyone around her. 3 days after the revealing dinner, when Alan takes Sophie to school, the principal intercepts them in the courtyard. "Mr. Marshall, I need to speak with you urgently." In the office, the principal closes the door and sits across from Alan with a grave expression. "Elizabeth was here yesterday afternoon." Alan's heart races. "What did she want?" "She said there had been a family misunderstanding, that you were going through an emotional crisis, and that she was coming to pick up Sophie to take her for a few days until you recovered." His blood freezes in his veins. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that only biological parents or legal guardians can withdraw a child, and that we would need your written authorization." She got very upset. "Upset how?" "She screamed. She said Sophie was practically her daughter, that she had taken care of her for years. She threatened to call social services and report that you weren't fit to care for a child." Alan clenches his fists. "Is there anything else?" "Yes. She left this." The principal hands him a sealed envelope with Sophie's name written in elegant handwriting. Alan opens it. Inside, there's a letter written on perfumed pink paper. "Dear Sophie, I know your daddy has filled your head with lies about me, but I know that deep down you miss me. Come meet me at Waterfront Park at 5 in the afternoon. I have gifts for you and many things to explain about why your daddy is acting so strange. Don't tell anyone. It will be our secret. With love, Mommy Elizabeth." The letter feels like poison between his fingers. Did Sophie see this? "No. My secretary gave it to me directly." "Thank you. Could you make a copy for my lawyers?" "Of course." That afternoon, Alan decides to act. With Charles's help and his lawyer, he organizes an operation to stop Elizabeth's manipulations once and for all. At 4:30, Alan and Elizabeth meet at Waterfront Park. He carries a hidden recorder, and Charles is stationed nearby with a camera. Elizabeth is sitting on a bench, dressed in an immaculate white suit, looking like the perfect image of wounded innocence. "Alan, I knew you'd come. How dare you try to contact my daughter after what you did?" "What I did? Raise her when you were always working?" "You abused her. You humiliated her. You hit her." Elizabeth laughs, a laugh cold as ice. "That girl is a manipulator. She has you eating out of her hand with her little lies." "I have it recorded, Elizabeth." Elizabeth goes pale. "What recording?" "I have everything recorded. Every hit, every insult, every time you forced her to eat from the floor." Elizabeth gets up from the bench, her composure starting to crack. "That doesn't prove anything. Any court will see I was just disciplining a problematic child." "Problematic? She's 6 years old. And she's just like her mother. Manipulative, dramatic, always seeking attention." Elizabeth's mask finally falls completely. "Her mother was a saint compared to you." "Her mother was an idiot. Do you know why I married you? For your money. I never loved you, and that girl is the living reminder of your perfect first wife that I could never overcome." The words come out like projectiles of pure hatred. And you know what else? I enjoyed every moment of making her suffer, every tear, every silent scream, because every time she cried, I saw her mother's face. Alan looks at her with a mixture of horror and pity. "You're sick." "No, I'm free. And I'm going to fight for that girl until they give her to me. I'm going to prove you're a negligent father who allows his daughter to make up stories." Elizabeth takes out her phone, dialing a number. "Hello, social services. I want to report a father who is psychologically abusing his daughter." Alan takes the phone from her hands. "Enough. Give it back to me." "No, this ends now." Charles approaches with the complete recording of the conversation. "Elizabeth Roberts, you are under arrest for violating the restraining order, attempted kidnapping, and harassment of a minor." Elizabeth turns and sees two police officers approaching. Charles had alerted the authorities before the meeting. "This is a trap." "No, this is justice." While the police read her rights, Elizabeth screams, "That girl is going to be a problem for you your whole life. She's weak, like her mother. You're going to regret this." "The only one I regret is you," Alan responds calmly. "Bringing you into our lives, not seeing who you really were." Elizabeth is taken away in the police car, screaming threats through the window until she disappears in the afternoon traffic. Alan stays alone in the park, trembling from adrenaline and relief. Charles puts a hand on his shoulder. "It's over, brother." Yes, finally it's over. When Alan arrives home, Sophie is in the garden with Carol, planting flowers in small clay pots. "Daddy, look what we're doing." Alan kneels next to his daughter, gently touching the petals of a newly planted daisy. "They're beautiful, Princess." Carol says if we take good care of them, they'll grow strong. Carol is right. Sophie looks at him with those big eyes that no longer have fear. "Daddy, I don't have to worry about Elizabeth anymore." "Never again, my love, never again." And for the first time since Elizabeth left their lives, Alan feels they can breathe completely. After the storm, calm always comes, and sometimes something much more beautiful than what we had before. Charleston, Spring 2030. The April sun enters through the windows of the brick colonial house like a liquid blessing. In the backyard, which was once a perfect rectangle of English grass, now blooms a universe of colors. Sophie Marshall is 11 years old and has hands stained with earth. She's kneeling next to Carol, who is now 65 years old and moves more slowly, but whose smile has grown wider with each passing year. "Grandma Carol, do you think these petunias will bloom for my birthday?" "If you take care of them like you've taken care of everything else in your life, little gardener, they'll bloom more beautiful than ever." Sophie is no longer the broken and silent 6-year-old girl. Her brown hair shines in the sun, she has grown tall and strong, and when she smiles, she lights up any room she's in. She has inherited her mother's eyes and her father's determination, but has developed something unique, an extraordinary ability to see pain in others and help them heal. At school, she's the girl who sits with classmates who are alone. At home, she helps Carol with the heaviest tasks without anyone asking her. And when she watches documentaries about children in difficult situations, she hugs her father and says, "I wish we could help them all." Alan observes from the kitchen window while preparing lunch. At 47 years old, he has more gray hair but fewer worry lines. He has learned to work less and live more. His construction company now specializes in building shelters for families in crisis, and he donates a significant part of his earnings to organizations that protect abused children. 3 years ago, Sophie asked to accompany him to a conference on child abuse. She went up on stage, took the microphone with hands that no longer trembled, and spoke for 10 minutes about the importance of listening to children, even when their pain is expressed in silence. There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. Since then, father and daughter traveled together twice a year. sharing their story in schools, community centers, and shelters. Sophie has developed a natural ability to connect with children who have lived through similar traumas. She helps them understand that surviving isn't enough. You can also thrive. Elizabeth tried to appeal her conviction twice. The first time, Sophie wrote a letter to the judge. She didn't ask for revenge or harsher punishment. She asked for Elizabeth to receive psychological help because people who hurt others are also hurt inside. The second appeal was denied when Elizabeth again violated her parole by trying to contact Sophie through social media. Now she serves an 8-year sentence in prison with a permanent restraining order. Sophie doesn't think about her anymore, or when she does, it's with a compassion that amazes all the adults around her. "Daddy," she shouts from the garden, "come see this." Alan comes out drying his hands with a kitchen towel. In the center of the garden, next to the rose bush they planted the first year after Elizabeth left, there's something new, a small wooden sign painted by hand with multicolored letters. Garden of Hope, where broken things learn to bloom again. "Do you like it?" asks Sophie, with dirt under her nails and pride in her eyes. "It's perfect, Princess. I made it in the school woodworking shop. Mr. Martinez helped me with the difficult letters." Carol approaches, wiping her hands on her apron that is now stained with earth instead of tears. "Do you know what day it is today?" she asks Sophie. "My birthday?" "No, silly," Carol laughs. "Today is exactly 5 years since your daddy found you crying in your room and decided to stay home to discover the truth." Alan stands still. He hadn't remembered the exact date, but Carol, with her elephant memory for important moments, never forgets anything. "Really?" asks Sophie. "Really. Today is 5 years since your real life began." Sophie reflects on this while arranging soil around a lavender plant. "You know what's the strangest thing, Daddy?" "What, my love?" "I can barely remember what it felt like to be afraid all the time. It's like that girl was another person." Alan sits on the grass next to her, staining his work pants without caring. "That girl is still you. Just now, it's a version of you who knows she's safe. Do you think Elizabeth will ever heal like I healed?" The question takes Alan by surprise. After 5 years, his daughter still has the ability to unsettle him with her emotional depth. "I don't know, Princess. Some people choose to heal and others choose to stay in their pain. I chose to heal." "Yes, you did. And you also chose to heal?" Alan thinks about these 5 years. The nights he spent awake wondering how he had been so blind. The family therapy sessions. The moments when he had to learn to be a father again, consciously and present. "Yes, I also did." Sophie gets up and hugs her father tightly. She's no longer the little girl he could lift with one arm. Now she's a strong preteen who gives hugs that could heal the world. "I love you, Daddy. And I love you, Princess. More than words can say." Carol watches them from a few meters away, with shining eyes. In her wrinkled hand, she holds an old watering can she uses for the most delicate plants. "You know what?" she says, approaching. "I think we should have a special dinner tonight. To celebrate." "Celebrate what?" asks Sophie. "The family we chose to be." That night, the three sit around the same table where the truth was once revealed. But now the table is full of laughter, shared dishes, and conversations that flow like a peaceful river. Sophie talks about her science project. She's growing plants in different types of soil to demonstrate how environment affects growth. Alan talks about the new shelter his company is building on the outskirts of the city. Carol shares benign neighborhood gossip and plans for next year's garden. It's a scene of perfect normalcy that once seemed impossible. After dinner, Sophie goes up to her room to do homework. The walls are no longer filled with gray and black drawings. Now there are photographs of happy moments, academic achievement certificates, and a mural she painted herself representing a garden in spring. On her desk, next to math and science books, there's a brown leather diary. Every night, before sleeping, Sophie writes. Sometimes about her day, sometimes about her dreams for the future, and sometimes letters to her deceased mother, telling her about the beautiful life she has built. Tonight, she writes something different. "Dear Diary, today, Daddy and Grandma Carol told me that 5 years ago my real life began. But I think that's not exact. I think my real life began the day I decided I deserved to be happy, even when everything was dark. Sometimes I still have nightmares. But when I wake up, I know I'm safe. I know Daddy is in the next room, and Grandma Carol is downstairs preparing breakfast, and I'll never be alone with my fear again. Tomorrow I'm going to plant sunflowers in the garden, because sunflowers always look toward the sun, even on cloudy days. Like me. With love, Sophie Marshall, the girl who didn't break. She closes the diary and goes to bed. Her stuffed rabbit, now more worn but still loved, is in its usual place on the pillow. Before closing her eyes, she hears the sounds of her house. Alan washing dishes in the kitchen, Carol watching the news on television, the gentle wind moving the curtains of her window. They are the sounds of safety, the sounds of home. The next morning, Alan finds something special on his office desk. A new drawing from Sophie. But this one is different from all the previous ones. It's a drawing of 3 figures standing in a garden full of flowers. A tall man, an older woman with an apron, and a girl in the center. They're all smiling. The sun shines from the upper right corner, and there are butterflies flying among the flowers. At the bottom, in clear and firm handwriting, it's written, "My chosen family." Alan pins the drawing to his office wall, next to the photo of his wedding with Sophie's mother, and a recent photograph of Sophie at a conference, speaking into a microphone with a radiant smile. 3 moments of his life, the love that was, the pain he overcame, and the hope he built. That afternoon, when he returns home, he finds Sophie in the garden, planting the sunflowers she had promised. Carol is beside her, teaching her the correct depth for the seeds. "Do you know how long they take to grow?" asks Alan, kneeling next to them. "The lady at the plant store said about 3 months, answers Sophie, carefully covering a seed with soil. "And are you going to have the patience to wait?" Sophie looks at him with a smile that contains all the wisdom of someone who has learned that good things are worth waiting for. "Daddy, I learned something very important when I was little." "What did you learn?" "That even in the deepest darkness, if you don't stop believing, the sun always comes out." Carol discreetly wipes away a tear. "And you know what else I learned?" "Tell me." "That the most beautiful flowers are the ones that grow after the strongest storms." Alan hugs his daughter, feeling how the circle completes itself. The broken girl he once found crying in silence has become a young woman who teaches others how to heal. "I love you, my little warrior." "I love you too, Daddy. And thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me, for choosing to see me, for teaching me that I deserve to be loved." In that moment, while the golden afternoon sun bathes the garden they have created together, Alan understands something fundamental. He didn't save his daughter. She saved herself. He just learned to love her the way she always deserved to be loved. And while Sophie carefully waters the sunflower seeds that will one day grow toward the sun, the story of a girl who found her voice in silence becomes the story of a family who chose to heal. The most beautiful flowers indeed grow after the strongest storms. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect, if it reminded you that every child deserves to be protected and loved, share it. Because somewhere, right now, there's a little Sophie who needs to know that her story can also have a beautiful ending. Leave us in the comments what city you're watching from, and tell us, what would you do to protect the children around you? Subscribe if you believe these stories can change lives. And remember, it's never too late to choose to see, to choose to listen, to choose to love.